Last time on The Incredible Party. With Rumpke's hand-drawn map showcasing enemies within the city. The party checks out the docks and see more Veritas ships have arrived since their activities in Stormcape Prison. This lends credence to Rumpke's hallucinations, prompting him and Hellcruck to speak to a religious scholar, while Kylea and Opal continue to research the Mineralis flower and giant folk.
What do you mean, Rumpke?
I saw my family, my mother, Olivia, and my brother, Volmik and Wermok, my sister, Elsie. I can remember their names, I know their faces, but not much more than that yet. This is amazing. Frederick, can I borrow that book?
I'm afraid I can't let it leave the church. I mean, what more is there for you to discover?
I don't know. It all started coming back to me when you were telling me more about Clangeddon and this is strange. Is there anything else?
If you'd like to spend more time here with the book, then please feel free to do so.
I come over and sort of lay a hand on Rumpke's back.
Rumpke, this is an incredible breakthrough. I'm so happy for you, but sometimes our mind needs a bit of time to process things, and you've made a lot of progress today. Maybe you get a good sleep, come back tomorrow, maybe, and spend some more time. I don't know. Don't try and force anything that's not ready to happen.
Yeah, it's probably good advice. All right. Hey, Frederick, if I come back maybe tomorrow, can I take another look? Would it be all right?
I will be here.
Thank you very much. Appreciate all you've done for me here.
Yes, thank you so much, Frederick. You've been very helpful. I appreciate your time.
It was a pleasure to meet with you, Hellcruck, and to speak with you again, Rumpke.
I sort of give a little sort of a bow unknowingly and sort of grab Hellcruck's arm and start walking away.
Is there a like a little collection basket or something I could drop a coin in on the way out to show some appreciation?
There absolutely is a donation box. You would know that in relation to the Lathander's Grace Hospital, like the hospital of the city, a portion of the donations for all of the temples within the borough goes to support the hospital itself, not just like the specific temple of Lathander. So it's more like a general donation to the city's health, basically, in addition to helping out the church if you were to donate to a temple here.
I'll drop 5 silver in.
I see him do that, and I do the same.
Okay.
But I look back to make sure Frederick's watching.
Frederick gives, again, both of you another slight nod, almost mimicking the bow that you gave to him.
Just like at the bar, you give a good tip, you get good service.
Yeah, you're investing in future visions, Rumpke.
Now, Rumpke, you have been bestowed with the favor of Clangeddon. Now, depending on how old or how, even if if this vision or hallucination, whatever you've seen, actually happened, if it's more of a memory. I mean, Happy was there in this memory. Surely he could not possibly have been there if this was a real event that took place. But you just have an understanding, much like you came to this understanding about who those dwarves in the front row in relation to you, who they were, your brothers and sisters, your family. You know that the favor of Clangeddon is something that you can utilize, basically like a way for you to call upon your newfound god, your newfound old faith here. So once per long rest, you can basically call upon the favor of Clangeddon, and you will receive advantage on any D20 roll. It doesn't require an action, just something you can do once per day, basically.
Nice. I knew religion would pay off eventually.
Now, I'm not telling you, I'm not going to go ahead and tell you how to roleplay. But Frederick did mention that generally followers of Clangeddon reach out to him via song.
The important word you said there was generally. Clangeddon and I have a different kind of relationship. We're past all that singing stuff. All right, I'll say to Hellcruck as we're walking out, hey, I wasn't crazy. I was really seeing things from before. I know it.
Yeah, I didn't really doubt you, Rumkey. I'm not one to jump to conclusions and just dismiss things like these. There's things that the mind does that we don't always understand, and I'm glad you were able to connect with some of your old memories.
I mean, it makes sense. I mean, when I was beating the hell out of people, I was who I used to be. I was playing out who I was. I was a warrior of some kind, and it wasn't me. It was me being old me. It wasn't me being insane. This is great. I mean, all I have to do is go explain this to Seth Dunlin, and maybe I can start getting my old life back.
Well, I sure hope that other people are as understanding, but I didn't for a moment think that you're a bad person, Rumkey. I knew there was something going on with the way you behaved when you had those incidents. You're not the type to lash out and really want to hurt someone real bad, you know?
This is good. I'm feeling a lot better. So, want to go back to the library, help them out a little bit?
Yeah, I'm sure they could use the help. Check on how much progress they've made, and maybe they've got some information for us.
Yeah, I think finding out more about these giants is going to be important too, because that has something to do with the Veritas. I got this weird feeling about the Veritas. They might be behind all of this.
Maybe it's not so bad that Kylea was sort of sneaking some time away to look into the giants.
Yeah, could come in handy.
Never know. Yeah, let's go see what they found out.
All right.
Okay, you can basically reconvene with the ladies at the Collegiate Library and play out the rest of this day of research. So you will, with all the hirings for the giants, you've already covered that being done today in an 8-hour period. Now with all four of you tackling the residual, I think there was 4 hours left on the Mineralis outside of Opal and Kylea's 8 hours today. Now it won't take you quite that long to finish up the Mineralis. So we're going to get two exposition dumps here worth of topics, depending, their length varying, of course, on the research roles that happen right now.
Are they typed up nicely for us to get in
The
Discord?
DM never pulls the curtain aside.
No. I mean, while my notes may be riddled with bullet points, for my own reading's sake, I'm just going to give you a very long-winded answer with a lot of additional, again, like I say, exposition with the particular points sprinkled throughout it. So do pay attention. Okay, so which one would we like first? Mineralis? You want to roll in the Mineralis first? Let's just you go ahead and you make your research roll. Yeah, so it is an intelligence skill check. The Collegiate Library does give you advantage. And again, you can choose any intelligence-based skill
Investigation.
you want to apply. If you can go with investigation.
16 plus 7. 25.
Nice.
23.
That is still very excellent. Because you have hit the 21 plus, which would give you 3 pieces of information. But most importantly, this gives you another +3 to any related experimentation roll with the Mineralis flower. That will stack with your previous round of researching, which I believe was a +2.
Yeah, I think it was. Because I was just under 21 or whatever.
Absolutely. Yeah. Now you have a +5 in addition to whatever you would roll to your modifiers to add to your experimentation roll, should you devote time to, I assume that's the next plan for Opal in the next coming week.
Yeah, I think we're getting there. I think this is maybe worth something. I didn't feel good enough. But let's hear it. Are you just going to tell me the color? What do you
I would say after your experience with kind of the one violet bloomed flower you have that starts to turn black, and you pull off what you realize to be seedlings here, I would assume that probably factors into at least one of the directions of which you went to research. So you kind of figure out more of the Mineralis flower life cycle. Basically, so you've already learned that it thrives in the heat, which you've applied, and you've already learned that the Mineralis flower can be used. It naturally repels predators and herbaceous animals from it. So you learn that the full life cycle of the Mineralis flower, from germination to seed dispersal, which you've witnessed now, realizing for sure, confirming you've witnessed the seed dispersal stage of that violet flower. It's typically 4 to 6 weeks, and now that depends on the climate in which it is growing. So very obviously, applying the heat, like you learned, helps to speed up that seed dispersal process. Now, after that 4 to 6 weeks, the purple petals and the stem and the root system turn black and crumble away, exactly like you've witnessed, which forms the seed part of that dispersal stage. And of course, that is spread like any kind of normal seed is dispersed in the environment through winds or via animals. So you've now confirmed.
But it deters animals.
That's absolutely true. But of course, the wind would blow seeds into an animal's fur, et cetera, right? Just like the normal, typical way that they would be dispersed were they growing wild in the environment. So now you know a time period of which you can expect your harvest, like to be, from your planted seeds to grow and to be able to harvest. You can expect to be about 4 weeks under the current conditions that you've applied with the fireplace going, etc., in your little enclosure you've built for them. So you can keep that in mind throughout some of your experimentation when you're utilizing the petals, and I know you talked about wanting to dry them out.
When you say they crumble away, like, is there any amount of residue or dust that would be worth trying to save for experimenting?
The entire flower, stem, pistil, petals, any like leaves on the stem just completely turns into that black, and like it just like dust, almost like as if something is disintegrating. But rather than it being like dust particles, it's these little tiny seeds that get dispersed. So you can expect that entire flower to basically just disintegrate into a pile of seeds in your pot at home.
So there's really nothing to do like drying the stems and stuff. That's not how it works.
Well, if you were to harvest them before it entered the seed dispersal stage, you could like harvest the petals, dry them out like Kylea and Helcrook saw in the prison. They saw some type of process, so at some point the flower itself was harvested and the petals were dried out.
Because I can't just keep planting flowers to disintegrate and plant flowers. I need some part of it.
Well, what you harvested, you were able to plant 3 more pots. So if all of them, germinate, if they all sprout, then you're gaining more seeds to be able to plant in controlled environment than flowers you're utilizing, ideally, right?
4 weeks is a long time.
4 weeks is a long time, yes. So that is the first part. So second part, like other plants, the pollination must be accomplished before that seed dispersal. However, that natural repellent, right, of the Mineralis flower also seems to apply to most types of insects you uncover. So when looking for a specific mention of pollinators, you find a passage that appears to be related, but sections of the text has been redacted. So what you learn from this is obviously you need some other means or some other type of insect to acquire, like a butter sturge, to actually pollinate, to continue to propagate your flowers. So that is a roadblock that you're currently hit. But after you've hit this redacted portion, you kind of pivot in your research. Knowing that the flower was originally discovered by a member of the Stalkers Lodge, you're able to kind of cross-reference with some historical records of its founding, like the Stalkers Lodge founding, and track the first mention of a mysterious flower that repels animals, contributing to the success of famed stalker Caduceus Caldwell, a name that you all recognize as one of the Stormcape's many city gates is named after him, Caldwell's Caution. Continuing from like this tangent of researching, you learn that up to its supposed extinction, the Mineros flower was tightly controlled by the Stalker's Lodge. The founders at the time had applied heavy pressure on the lodge to turn that flower into a city export, as obviously its growth, the Mineros flower growth is localized to the Tireless Glade and this portion of Senta. Obviously, that was met with constant pushback from the Stalker's Lodge guild leader. Ultimately, with the Tireless Purge in 102 MW3 and the extinction of the flower, the founders' urge to obviously directly monetize the plant never came to fruition. Pun intended. Now, again, along these lines, this isn't like specific information. This is like in tangential information, right? So continuing with this line of thinking, you find a kind of a particularly interesting book written by somebody named Switch Burles, titled Stalkers of Senta. It seems to be a book that recounts several journeys the author took with various adventurers and wilderness guides from the various regions of Senta, seemingly published nearly 50 years ago. And the writing is, I mean, it's obviously clearly like sensationalized, meant to be, appeal to adventure-seeking masses in mass production print. But there is a passage within that recounts a journey into the Tireless Glade with a hired member of the Stalker's Lodge that stands out to you. It reads, "Days of treacherous travel within the Tireless Glade could easily have been weeks, maybe even months. The perpetual darkness of the thick canopy above us removed all sense of time, and the constant creak of stretching, growing tree limbs were enough to keep even the heaviest of sleeper awake in their bedroll. There was no reprieve from the glade's vicious predators, either, always hunting us, always lurking in the underbrush. In the trees above us, it seemed there was no sanctuary but that of the stalker's tools, tricks, and skills. I was constantly left in stunned disbelief at their speed and agility, at their pinpoint accuracy with a bow, hunting for food to sustain us and to defend us against tooth and claw looking to rend flesh from bone. Impressed by their vast knowledge of forageable vegetation amidst the overgrowth of the curious gladewood, and saved by their use of tonic and tincture to thwart detection of the most savage beasts." So all of this confirms for you that at some point the Stalker's Lodge had access to, controlled the Mineralis flower, and as fabled as they are not just in Stormcape but all across Senta, perhaps still in some form utilizing a variation or a version of the Mineralis flower to continue being as impressive as Mr. Burles here writes about. Basically, all these writings, I would think, Opal, strikes you as perhaps another avenue of obtaining Mineralis flower. Like outside of dealing with Trinity, perhaps. And maybe I would say you would possibly surmise that based on the historical records of, the Stalker's Lodge pushing back against the founders wanting to control this flower, that they probably wouldn't take too kindly of some other organization utilizing the flower and the methods of utilizing that flower that they've literally built their reputations on.
What do we know about the Stalker's Lodge? I'm trying to think that's where what's-his-name was in prison, used to run it, right? No,
that's the Prowlers Guild. The Stalker's Lodge are basically the city's hunters and seekers and guides.
Do we have any history on that?
So the Stalker's Lodge was officially established in 34 MW3. They're hunters and trackers and gatherers, which have always been a part of, or were a huge part in addition to like the Angler's Hall, of basically feeding Stormcape City in its burgeoning years of establishing its foothold in the area. And before that Tireless Glade was purged, and cut back from the city limits, the range of territory basically was, completely wild. Predators, particularly a pair of owlbears that roamed the territory. So venturing into the glade was essentially a death sentence. And really the stalkers and the members of the Stalker's Lodge, with now, after your readings, with clearly the aid of Caduceus Caldwell, one of its founding members, devised some method of navigating the glade successfully and avoiding the perils within. So now, tying into its reputation here and figuring out its relationship to this mineralis flower, which repels animals, very obviously played a huge role in their success and reputation, as I say.
What you would have found is you would have said, hey, the mineralis flower is essentially linked to the Stalker's Lodge some 50 years ago when they were clearing whenever they were clearing out the Tireless Glade, they found this mineralis flower that would repel.
So sorry. Let me give you the if you look at the chain of events here. So Stalker's Lodge established in 34 MW3. It is currently 848 MW3. Tyler's Purge wasn't until 102 MW3. So in 34, well before the forest was pushed back, well before the lunar lanterns were ever invented,
These guys had the flower.
Yeah, clearly we're utilizing the flower.
And it was for repellent, mostly.
Seems like that way, yeah. Basically all that, like you're now confirming with your research now, but to John's point, this journal and entry and sensationalized journaling from 50 years ago clearly states, and you can connect that they're obviously still using some version of whatever mixture, whatever tincture they concocted using the mineralis flower then 800 years ago to now, despite this flower supposed to being extinct.
It's not extinct. It's been kept under wraps.
Tightly controlled, for sure.
More than likely by the Stalkers Guild. Okay.
Someone gave it to the Trinity and taught them how to use it, too. Or someone switched over, sort of thing.
I figured stuff out. I think studying was worth it, maybe. I know so much stuff about the flower, but maybe I won't talk about it here. But also, do you guys know anyone in the Stalkers Guild? Like, goes to the Stalkers Lodge? Like, you guys know stalkers?
I don't think so. I mean, some of them are probably at the tavern from time to time, but I don't know any of them by, like, friends or anything.
Rumkey, while you're correct, you wouldn't know specifically of us, like like an acquaintance with a stalker. You do know that the Stalkers Lodge and the Brawlers Club work very closely. Oftentimes, members of the Stalkers Lodge will hire Brawlers Club members as part of their guide, as like basically additional muscle. So the two guilds work very closely together, very friendly with each other. So if you had some in to the Brawlers Club, which perhaps you know of somebody that you like to avoid most of the time, could help you with that. That could be an avenue to speak to somebody that would know something at the Stalkers Lodge.
Come to think of it, I know there's a guy I know that knows some people in the Brawlers that have worked with the Stalkers from time to time. They hire him for muscle.
The cool thing is, I'm kind of nerding out right now, but there's these writings. They're kind of accentuated, but 50 years ago. Anyway, this flower, the mineralis flower, that everyone thinks is extinct, but is definitely not extinct, has been nurtured and kept secret by the Stalkers for like 800 years. Think of all the things I could make and what I could learn and how much better we can make your withdrawals.
So you think the Stalkers are working with the Trinity?
How the flower was transferred to the Trinity's possession and how they have the knowledge of growing and keeping these things is another question. Because, okay, so you guys mentioned, I didn't really see it, but in the jail there were like these butter sturges, right? And they were like pollinating? Or like flying by the little wispy seeds? Or something?
Yeah, no, they were, like fairly decent-sized flying insect things.
Did they look repelled by the plants?
No, they were around the plants and also on the ceiling and in the air and kind of all around us.
We need to figure out how, hopefully when I grow more of these seeds, like how to pollinate them, because apparently, anyway, man.
We need a butter sturge?
Not necessarily, maybe I could figure out how.
You're gonna become a butter sturge?
No, I could just like use a rope or a paintbrush and sort of put some pollen. I don't know, I need to research pollinating next.
So what they use this flower for 800 some odd years ago? Everybody getting high back then?
I don't think it was for drugs. I think it was used for its repellent properties. Maybe like a bug spray, or like some sort of don't come near me when they're out hunting. Like, I don't know.
Why would somebody be wanting to repel stuff?
Repel bad things.
Well, I think, like, the tireless glade is full of dangerous things, right? So I guess it makes sense.
Yeah, but they've been keeping this thing under wraps for 800 years. Now all of a sudden they're making drugs with it.
Well, maybe they're making money off the drugs. We'll have to figure it out. I don't know.
Maybe, it fell into the wrong hands.
I also learned that the seeds I planted and put in my little thingy by the fireplace, it's gonna take like a month. So, that's fun. No vacations or long trips away for us. I need to be there taking care of my plants.
Are you thinking it's worth reaching out and trying to find out somebody from the Stalkers Guild to talk to about this? Seems like it'd be super secret.
It's kind of a random tidbit I ran into, but it might be worth a look into. We've got time waiting for this next batch of flowers to grow, and I'm gonna start experimenting, so that I'll need the extra drugs for.
If you think it's gonna help get me off this stuff, I guess I can talk to Nylan. As much as I would rather just stay addicted.
Oh. Yeah, we need... Oh, Rumpke. Oh, Rumpke.
Rumpke, you sound different.
What's that?
You sound different.
How so?
We're not sure. Just... And she gestures like your whole body. Different.
Well, right now I'm still a little tired. But, things are looking up. Got some good news today. Think I'm figuring out everything that, why I've been having all these visions and stuff. But, TBD on that.
No possible chance of complication on the Minerals flowers, as you didn't hire any additional help. You kept it all in-house with the party. I will say, Opal, that you would feel pretty satisfied at this point that you've exhausted the extent of research that you can find, at least here in the library. Again, you talked about perhaps more like in the Arcanist Guild. Now, perhaps there's more records, most likely like in the Stalker's Lodge, kept by them somehow. So this particular avenue of figuring out information for the Minerals flower, you've definitely exhausted. You would certainly be aware of that.
Yeah, that was my thought, is like move on to some experimentation, see where Rumpke's connections go. And it does feel like an extra bonus tidbit of information or something, where it's like, okay, it's not about the flower, but it might be more information in general and connection.
Right, and again, it all still contributes to your experimentation. So that's really probably the biggest thing. You now have a +5 on top of whatever else you're going to add to your, which is very, very good. Because if you recall, the thresholds of success for the experimentation are a little higher than they were for the research. Okay, so let's do the giant stuff. Emily, why don't you please go ahead and make me an intelligence check, please? I'm not sure what skill you think you would apply, what works might best for you. History might be a good one if it's decent for you. I'd let you use investigate because we just let Opal do that.
Well, it looks like they're all a +2, so it doesn't matter. Oh, unless you let me use nature. Can I use nature because it's giants and they're natural beings?
I will I will let you use nature because you specifically were looking into this like area, basically Storm Cape and giants, like this territory. I'll go with that stretch. Now, also keep in mind you have advantage because you've utilized the library's resources.
Well, that's not a great roll. That's a 12 with my +5 to nature.
With advantage?
With advantage. That was the
Emily.
better roll.
Dear
Detmer.
goodness.
That was the better roll.
Honestly, you've fallen in probably the medium ranger of 11 to 20. That does give you 2 pieces of information. Now, in addition to these 2 specific pieces, you again uncover basically background information. And these are things that, so like again, some of the longer lived races within the city, perhaps obviously historians of the city themselves. Like this isn't information that is widely known to the general public, but still known in some circles. So you definitely learn, again, this is all specifically because you looked into Stormcape's relationship to the surrounding giant folk. You learned that very soon after the tumultuous tide shipwrecked in Stormcape Bay with the founders and the survivors of the wreck, only about 5 or 6 years after they shipwrecked here and were starting to establish the city, that they run into giant folk in the westward hillsides. And there wasn't thankfully any fatalities in that run-in, but it would still obviously set off, raise tensions between the two groups, now occupying this shared territory, this overlap of territory. At the time, the founding families were able to negotiate the Giants' territorial agreement, basically. And with no real leverage, however, they were essentially relegated to the immediate area around the bay, with the caveat that they could stay there basically unhindered by any like marauding giant folk from the hillsides, as long as they provided the giant with food from the sea, basically fishing for them, providing them something that they don't really specialize or can't get in their own diets. But that was part of the agreement that the giants essentially forced upon the burgeoning Capians. And that very quickly kicked off the push to basically grow the ranks of the city guard and usher in more people from across Senta to build up the population of the city. That, in addition to what Hellcrux certainly already knows about the city guard functioning as a type of troop deployment to ode houses operating within the mineral war. So all of that is like, it makes sense that you've uncovered this as kind of part of that drive. And after 6-7 years of garnering this force, the founders were essentially be able to use this kind of warfare leverage, this troop deployment leverage they have, as leverage for a better negotiation, where they renegotiate this territory pact, and a pact that held true for a number of centuries here, a couple centuries, until the Giants' Rebellion, which I think is probably the bulk of what you really uncover some details. And again, this is something that the general story is still told like as like a fable of valiant heroics amongst the city. So in 245 NW3, the giant folk basically attempted to sack Stormcape City, deciding that the previously negotiated division of the surrounding resources and land no longer to their liking. And the giants marched from their home in the Western Hills and the Annam Range, basically to be met by one Sergeant Ashley the Bastion Lioncaster and 6 city guards under her command. They were able to basically, just the small handful of them, hold the line against the onslaught of this giant folk attempting to sack this fledgling city. The warnings of thick black plumes of smoke from the west signaled their advance through the foothills. Sources of smoke that you would immediately put together, like you literally drove your carriage by as you were going out to that Annam Pass junction, where you encountered giant folk there and were running from that wagon, which you learned had Kaitovensis and Veritas members in it. You saw all those burnt out watchtowers that were, again, they basically served their purpose in this rebellion, offering resistance and stemming the advancement of the giant folk forcements. And through rerouting and distractions and basically cunning tactics, Sergeant Lancaster and her small contingent of guards essentially able to delay the giant folk enough where the city could essentially bolster its own defenses. Basically bought time for the city to mount a defense, a counterattack. Even though the delays, they still arrive at Stormcape, of course, and the gate of which they advance towards only held through the heroic act of Lancaster. She's closed it herself from the outside, ordering it to be barricaded within, took one valiant stand against the impossible odds for her, battling the giant commander and ultimately defeating him, which devastated the giant folks' morale. She ultimately succumbed to her injuries sustained in the fight. Again, this is another name that you all would know because Ashley's Access Way, the gate you've used numerous times to get to and from Lehans, is named for Sergeant Lioncaster. And that was the very gate, one of the longest standing gates in the city. Still to this day, you can see its battle marks from this occasion that's never fully been repaired, only to functionality, but almost as this homage to that day of what's happened in Stormcape's history. So all of that is just kind of background information that you either, learn for the first time perhaps, or basically like, oh, I remembered the stories of this kind of thing. So your two main points that you uncover. One of which, technically you're going to get three here because you rolled for two, but you've uncovered a third yourself, essentially. Figuring out that this agreement between the city and the giant folk, the one that currently, that may or may not have been broken by Opal's actions up at the Annam Pass Junction, it mainly just consisted of two parts. The giants don't venture any closer to Stormcape than that junction, and monthly food supplies are sent to the base of the mountains at the beginning of every month. Those are, something you've basically uncovered speaking to Lehan, literally speaking to giant folk on Kylia's part. Now, the other two, you learned that this giant's rebellion was spurred by a giant nobleman named Darnum Rignatham. He was involved in that initial territory agreement between the giants and the founders. And he believed that the Capians, they were just lesser than giant folk. Darnum commanded that attacking force that Sergeant Lioncaster held out against. He, in fact, was the giant defeated in one-on-one combat by Lioncaster that completely demoralized the giant folk. And you find those specific names and recountings in a very thin, plainly bound historical volume. There seems to be no title on the cover, but the very first page when you open it reads The Giants' War. And this book has clearly been mistreated. There's ink smudges in places. Pages are kind of torn and weathered, crisp and crumpled from clear water damage that's been dried and wet again and then redried. Almost as if it was forgotten or purposely neglected, misplaced somewhere. But it details the following year after that rebellion, that rebellious act by Darnum, it details a year of covert warfare against the giant folk in retaliation for this rebellion. And it almost fills in some gaps in the historic texts that you were reading, that the gaps that kind of just go unacknowledged, right? It's all from your readings, it's as if the rebellion happens, Sergeant Lancaster stopped it, then there was peace. Now with this additional counting of a year, 12 to 16 months of additional fighting, basically, that isn't told, this is something you've never heard any talk of. It makes so much more sense to the overall historical events and how something like that would play out. Within these books, defines continued assault on the giants for this relentless, ceaseless year, this browbeating the giant folk into submission. And you find explicitly stated that this could only have been accomplished with the help of the Veritas. So they clearly backed this early burgeoning war on behalf of the founding families. Now, the second piece of information you get. Now, though he was defeated, Darnum Rignatham was not killed by Lioncaster. Unlike the sergeant, he did survive his war wounds, only to be summarily executed by the newly installed giant folk leaders after this peace treaty was formed following the Stormcape City counterattacks. And obviously this treaty is what kind of stands now, essentially giving the founders the rights, quote unquote, the rights to 20-fold the amount of land that was originally negotiated, right? Clearly what they've taken by force. And it is rumored that Darnum Rignatham was decapitated and that his head was gifted to the founders of Stormcape to serve as a trophy and as an apology for the Giants' rebellion.
And a tree sprung up from where it was buried.
Are we aware of any giant skull that's on display anywhere in the city?
Absolutely not. Nope, there is nothing like that anywhere publicly available within the city. Like I said, the Giants' War is not something that is obviously spoken about anywhere. Clearly, like I said, the condition of this volume, like as if it's like supposed to have been completely, disposed of, got rid of, but has somehow ended up in the collegiate library in this terrible condition.
So all this was like 600 years ago, right?
Yeah, that would have been close to six centuries ago. Now, keep in mind, like the reason the founders came this far north was to basically get as far away from any type of warfare as possible. So clearly, the fact that they would be waging this type of relentless, merciless slaughter of these giant folk in retaliation definitely would not be good for their public image.
So from the city's perspective, once they killed the leader, it was all over.
Peace was brought in by the founders, yeah.
And then the Veritas went and helped.
The Veritas helped the founders wage their personal secret war, basically, against the giant folk. And now suddenly you are seeing Veritas back in the city and moving westward towards where giant folk are to be.
And giant folk are moving eastward farther than they're supposed to be.
And starving.
Oh yeah, and starving.
Did Lehan say something about how they were delivering stuff every month, sort of on the down low? Did he mention that?
So he said what he told you specifically about the food supply shipments is that Shemp Hampleton, who runs the Mercantile Corporation, every monthly would send somebody, or he would come out himself, oversee the rental of a number of wagons or carriages that would be loaded up with supplies and sent westward. And he basically, Lehan commented on how beat up and dinged up the wagons generally come back, and it's kind of a pain in the rear end because of how damaged they get, but the money is a monthly revenue and is pretty good.
So the food's still been going, so they held up their end of the bargain, is what it sounds like. The treaty, at least the founders have, or whoever is in charge of that, the ship. But the Giants have broke the treaty because they came closer to the city than they were supposed to be.
And then we broke the treaty by killing 3 of them.
Allegedly.
Well, let me ask, do you believe that the Veritas were going out to do what? What were they moving westward for? What's the party's theory about why they were headed westward?
Sounds to me like the founders were worried the Giants were going to come and attack the city again, so they brought the Veritas in as sort of the strong arm to let the Giants know that they shouldn't screw with them.
So that is different than the previous theories of why the Veritas here. Do they coincide? Do they completely conflict? Are you overwriting your previous theories about the Veritas being here for either Green Stupor or to do somehow involved with Zillium?
Well, I think overall they want the Zillium, right? I mean, that's the whole mineral war.
But it's not here. I think since they came with force in the armor, they're here to teach the Giants a lesson.
My thinking prior to this info dump was that, if anything, maybe a trade is happening where Stormcape is exporting the Green Stupor, which would be good for army folk because it makes you really strong and to be able to ignore pain or whatever. And maybe the people who are selling it to the Veritas are being paid in Zillium. But now that we know this, I mean, the Green Stupor still could be a form of payment, but instead of exchange for Zillium, it could be exchange for protection from the Giants, maybe?
What can they protect all shrivelly and skinny?
The city's worried about Giants potentially getting closer and closer and threatening the city, so we're paying the Veritas to be the muscle to drive them back, and potentially paying with Green Stupor, or not.
Yeah, that's a good theory. I mean, all we really know about the Veritas is they want the Zillium, and they protected the city 600 years ago when called upon. And we really don't know much else about them. We're making an assumption that they would want the stuff for Warrior, the green stoop.
I can't think of any way that Zillium plays into this, like unless some was somehow discovered up around Storm Cape by some means, but otherwise I'm not quite sure how Zillium would play into this at all. The only reason I thought it was maybe part of the equation was because maybe we were, like I said, manufacturing and exporting green stupor to these army folks, and in exchange they were paying us with Zillium, but I don't know.
So let me ask you this. You've seen kind of this emaciated condition of some giant folk, and we've been presuming that perhaps that is a situation where they are all most likely in that type of state across, however many of their numbers here still reside in the hills, and then obviously further, like the nearly 100 miles out to the base of the range Annam, the mountainside. How would you believe the witness state of the giant folk now versus how they seem to be in, a show of display, obviously confident enough to march upon the city, 600 years ago? How does that compare to the state of the city's current guard force, which is at its peak? They have a concurrent of 20,000 plus members. Not all of them, of course, within the city itself. A lot of them are sent abroad. But how do you think that compares to the fighting force that the founders had, were able to muster up 600 years ago and needed the Veritas help then? How do you think that compares to how much they would need the Veritas help in regards of defending the city now?
I would assume that back when Storm Cape was in its infancy, it would have been a lot weaker of a guard force.
Mm-hmm.
So we're a lot stronger now, and the giants seem to not be all that strong if they're, who knows if the ones that we saw are a full representation of all the giants, but
I don't think like they would be ready to gear up for an attack on the city if they're still getting
not looking like that.
So that means something happening out with the giants. Maybe something's attacking the giants. Maybe
something's starving them. I don't know.
Yeah.
Or they had a population boom and there's just too many of them now for the meager food that was provided before to feed all of them.
Didn't you say at the beginning that some of the guards were being conscripted or asked to go to the south or somewhere to fight?
Yes. So like I said, the as of recent consensus amongst the guardship puts the total guard force numbers at 21,243. That includes about 5,000 of them that operate within Storm Cape, and the remaining 16,000 and change are sent on what the founders call peacekeeping missions on behalf of Storm Cape and the founders.
There's not an active battle; they're just sent out to be sort of
peacekeepers.
That's what the founders say. Yes.
When Leland finishes a sentence as nerdy as that, he needs to at least push the middle of his glasses. I think for flavor.
It was a very
even
diplomatic answer. That's what the
well, if you would have
say.
known in 1545, Prala Mar OM, what are the years? I don't even.
So we have a very substantial guard force at the moment in comparison to the last time we had to fight off giants.
But they're not here.
Right, yeah, I suppose a large portion of them aren't here, but I would wager to guess that even the remaining guard force is probably still more than there was back then. I don't know. But yeah, maybe the giant population has really swelled over the years, and that's why we're seeing giants straying farther out and are emaciated, because the food supply is not enough to keep up with the population. So maybe there's tons and tons of giants.
Starving. Tons and tons of starving giants.
This is all very theoretical. Hypothetical,
yes.
Sorry.
Let's assume that Emily's hypothesis isn't true. There aren't tons and tons of giants. Why are the Veritas all of a sudden back again and heading into giant territory if there isn't a looming giant threat from an overpopulation?
How does the Skyquake impact site and all of that stuff relay into this? Because that's in that area, right? Where the giants are.
It is kind of north of the hillsides, yes. And as everybody but Rumpke kind of witnessed, like you saw the impact that it did have on that landscape. That landscape out there is completely barren. There's nothing that grows out there. Essentially what you saw was the extent of Stormcape's farmlands, like that 20 miles west of the city, essentially. Like they are utilizing every bit of potable area of landscape that they can actually grow something in that exists within those hillsides between the city and the mountains. So absolutely that could factor in a large part of how and why the giants appear to be suffering and not being able to support themselves. But also the Skyquake event happened 400 years ago, so it's been that way for a long time. So perhaps its impacts weren't immediately felt, and perhaps they've grown to this point, and the giants have just been slowly declining more and more and more as the time passes on. And I think, keep in mind, giants are also long-living races. Some specific types of giants can live up to 600, 700 years as well.
When Kylea went on her walkabout and talked to those two giants, didn't they say the food was not enough?
They did, yes. Yeah, you encountered, I believe they were hill giants, and they had managed to capture like a deer. Seemed to be very sparse out there, though. Like they were very lucky to have caught that animal that they did. And yes, they spoke to you briefly about, where they were essentially asking you, hey, where's the food? We see a small folk. Usually we see them with the food kind of thing.
So maybe the food's not arriving as it's supposed to be.
Well, what you've learned is, as per Lehan's records, is that some type of wagon, some entourage of wagons with something loaded into them is leaving on a monthly basis, at least from Lehan's. So where it's ending up, that's the question, I suppose.
Oh, there's a giant overlord hoarding all the food, not letting all the giant peons have it.
Now, let me ask you another giant factor. The bread battle. Do you believe anything of this has anything to do with Veritas, has anything to do with the bread battle?
Absolutely not. Completely different thing.
The bread battle is very clearly a giant folk of some kind.
I'm thinking it's Dame Darnum. They said his head because it was enchanted to become the bread battle. So that's what started the whole thing, was this head they sent for the trophy.
I mean, the head being cut off did ring, some
Emily's spitting
senses.
Good theories today.
Or Emily's way out in the deep end.
I guess we gotta know more about how a bread battle's created.
Yeah.
Do you plant a giant skull and then 600 years later a tree?
Now I want to research giant fairy tales, because they mentioned the bread battle, the two that Kylea spoke to, and they knew about it. So now I needed to research giant folklore.
Yes, I was absolutely going to suggest that. Another round of research in that specific area, which was why I asked you where you were focusing right from the outset. Absolutely, that may be a good use of your time. Now, however, you have put in a total of 95 gold pieces to accomplish this research task. That gives you a 95% chance of some complication happening with the research. So, Emily, could you roll me a D100, please?
Oh, why,
this is going to
Emily?
go well.
If you get above a 95, nothing happens.
Emily's not allowed to roll for this.
I don't think Emily's ever rolled above a 95 on percentile dice.
Only when she's supposed to roll low.
82!
Oh,
that was
very
slightly
close.
close.
Not bad.
Could you roll me a D6, please?
5?
So throughout, the four of you have been constantly coming and going from this library, basically at your leisure, which most people do. But oftentimes you found yourself into having some of these conversations about what you're uncovering near the end of the day, always met by multiple shh, and it's quiet in the libraries. Perhaps the excited handling or mishandling of some books had caught the attention of some of the library workers. So your poor behavior and etiquette in the collegiate library has resulted in you being banned from it for 1 month.
Oh, no! All of us or just me?
Just Kylea.
Well, I mean, it could be worse. Could have been all of us.
Could be worse. Yeah. But I will just, since you paid the fee, I will just apply that to you, Kylia.
You made a giant nuisance in there.
Did somebody come over and tell her in front of us?
Yeah, she'll absolutely be chastised at the end of this day. And Kylie, you were told that you are not welcome for 1 calendar month.
But
Dang.
we need to know. But no.
Well, you can reflect on your actions here today, and in 1 month, hopefully, you can come back with a better attitude and treatment of the great number of books we have here at the Collegiate Library.
They rip up your library card right in front of you.
Yeah. This is why we don't laminate them.
Oh.
Yes, magically laminating.
Shoot. Well, I guess it'd be worse if it was all 4 of us.
Opal, you gotta look into the folklore. The giants, you gotta find out.
Shh, they're listening. I'll do it later.
Are you 3 with her?
No.
I turn around and pick up a book.
I'm leaving.
I flip through pages and I'm like, who are you even talking about?
Okay, you've reached the end of this research day, so all your research is done. You've spent your 8 hours here at the library, which obviously takes you into the later evening of April 30th here as well. What now? Is there something today you still want to accomplish, or is it just kind of back to the keep for the night?
Back to the keep, I would think, to discuss things that we've just learned and sort of decide what our next steps are going to be. I think what I will do is I'll go talk to my connections to see if I can get some kind of information or connection with people in the stalkers. Find if I can find out somebody, the stalkers, that would give us access or know something about the history of the Mineralis flower. That's what I think I'll say my part is going to be for our next step. What about you guys?
Experimenting.
Okay, so you want to start your experiment. Okay, so you can all return to the keep and basically settle down for bed, get your sleep, and the following morning will be Mela 1st, the first of the next month. Yeah, we can have this discussion of what you want to accomplish. So Rumpke wants to go speak to Nylan. Opal, you want to start your experimentation. Now remember, you can pay for more help for your experimentation, obviously at potential complications. But for somebody in the party to help you, they need to be proficient with an alchemist kit to do so. In your experimentation, until you can kind of figure out how to utilize the petals properly, you can expect to use a dose of stupor a day in your experimentation. Yeah. Kylia, how about you? Since you can't go back to the library.
No.
Find another library.
We might want to go talk to Zalmo.
Isn't he on a trip or something?
Well, see if he's back, see if he knows anything about the giants, and see if he knows anything about the stalkers that he might want to tell us. Yeah, so we want to see if Zalmo's back or not.
Was Happy supposed to send us a letter?
Happy has only been gone for like a day on his
2
voyage
days.
So
He's writing you a letter mid. Y'all need to figure out how long we've been
I'll talk to Happy when I get back to my room.
Hell Kruk, what about you? To Lehands? Put in some work, maybe put in some hours on the special wagon?
2 or 3 hours a week? Keep up with everything?
I definitely want to make my presence known a little bit more at Lehands and help out a bit more. I'm also, I don't know when the timeline would line up, but I would like to look into any possibility of the next time this Hempleton fella rents out some carriages to head over to the Giants for supplies. I'd be interested in trying to set up a sneak peek at what goes into those carriages. I suppose he would take the carriages from Lehands to somewhere to be filled up and then leave the city is what would make sense to me. So
get your hidey hole in one of the things and then you can ride along.
Yeah, I mean, I'd want to have a hidey hole that could exit by the bottom in case I get stuff piled on top of me and trap me in there. But I don't know, some sort of scheme to try and get more information about what's going into those carriages. If it meant maybe just tailing them, but if that's not going to happen for another 2 weeks or whatever, then.
Well, as per some of the records that Leanna's showing you, it happens, near the beginning of the month. So being the first of the month, this would be perfect time to kind of set up your own little surveillance, maybe paying more attention to the comings and goings of some of the wagons. And obviously this is something that has presumably been happening for 600 years. So you can even think back to the times that you were around witnessing, maybe, finishing with your mucking out the stall duty, and you see a contingent of wagons kind of being, leaving all at once kind of thing. There's going to be numerous times which you can recall that happening, right? Maybe if you were to come face to face with Shemp, you might even be able to recognize the face too, knowing to put a name to somebody, right? So absolutely, that makes a lot of sense. Anybody interested in picking up the latest edition of the Storm's Herald?
Absolutely.
Won't they throw one on our doorstep?
No, you don't get one thrown on your doorstep.
I think this might be the first edition where Opal doesn't hear about it at the breakfast table or something, so...
Yes, this is Storm's Herald issue number 9, volume 99, hold number 2582 for 2 Nor Mail of 1st, 848 MW3. And I'd say there's a number of articles here that would catch each of your eyes. First one being escapees still at large. Reports of a widespread riot at Stormcape Prison have been confirmed, occurring in the late night hours of April 23rd and persisting into the morning hours of April 24th. The rebellious acts resulted in dozens of casualties and 15 fatalities, 10 inmates and 5 prison officers. Warden Truscar issued this statement on the incident. A troubling and tragic occurrence such as this is very rare. Our officers are highly trained and remain ever diligent against a threat within the prison's walls. They keep the riffraff separate from innocent Capians. They keep them in line and ensure that they are properly punished for their crimes and ultimately reformed to contribute to this prosperous city as every law-abiding citizen does. The officers we've lost will never be forgotten and their families will always be taken care of. The warden went on to report that the riot most likely originated in the prison infirmary at the hands of 4 individuals. Feigning injuries, 4 inmates overpowered their guard escorts, brutally murdering them and obtaining access to restricted areas. Luckily, our care staff, Dr. Cockle, remained unharmed during the incident, Truscar continued to say. These 4 inmates continued to make Storm's End history by somehow escaping the confinements of the prison. They remain at large and are considered to be incredibly dangerous. A heavily tattooed dwarf male, Delta Bronx, an elderly half-orc male, Axel Snuff, a gnome female sporting bright pink hair, Jewel Crusher, and a young Eladrin female, Lila Slinks. Captain Drake Lakely advises any Capians who may have information on these individuals, or any individual that may match their appearance, to report to the nearest guard tower immediately. Warden Truscar had more to say on the ensuing aftermath of the prison riot. After tallying the inmates and doing what we could for the injured, a 5th prisoner has been deemed missing. Benito Algator, ex-leader of the now-defunct Prowlers Guild. He was either working with the 4 inciting individuals or was taken as their captive during their escape. Regardless of the circumstances around Algator's involvement in these events, he poses a greater threat to the city than 4 petty thieves ever could. He has only just begun to pay his debt for the damage the Prowlers Guild caused to Stormcape. This article was written by Jules Penfeld.
Well, that's extremely bad. Very bad.
And at the Storm's Herald, this is a name, you've Jules Penfeld, you've seen this, he writes a number of articles. He's actually the lead investigative journalist at the Storm's Herald. A couple more articles here that are now seemingly becoming more prevalent.
Wanted maze gardener?
Yes, in
what happened?
There's a wanted section that reads, Maze Gardener. The Arcadis Academia is now accepting applicants for a full-time position, tending to the tireless hedge maze. Must be willing to work nights and have a good sense of direction. Submit all applications to the Department of Agriculture Management.
Oh,
was he that depressed? Did he really do it?
No. They just need a second maze gardener.
We should have talked to Manny.
You have been talking about going to visit Manny for the last couple of days. Here. Okay, two last articles here. The next titled Visitors from Afar. Potential shifting battle lines in the Third Mineral War may be cause for concern to the average Capian. Far from our fair city, the Nautilus Shard makes grounds towards retaking their claim on the latest Zillium deposit. Discovered in the Darag region over 8 centuries ago and igniting this current era of mineral war, it is estimated to be the largest source of the highly coveted deep red mineral ever uncovered. A Veritas-owned supply depot was razed to the ground on Marla 13th, striking a devastating blow to supply chains supporting the frontline Veritas soldiers, forcing them into a tactical retreat and allowing the Nautilus Shard to capture this lost territory. There have been no recent reports on Forge-worn clan movements, but military analysts speculate a strike is imminent, as the Nautilus Shard is spread thin to occupy this newly claimed battle line around the Zillium deposit. A clear Veritas presence has been felt within Stormcape this last week, an incredibly rare occurrence but an obvious reaction to their suffered losses to seek additional aid from the founding families. These visitors only continue to further strain some Capians' opinions on the founders' ties to and involvement in the Third Mineral War. Spokesperson for the Peaceable Patriots, Annie Blix, was unavailable for direct comment, but did submit a written statement to the Storm's Herald. Our streets are now being overrun by Veritas warriors, quickly becoming a staging ground for war as more of their ships arrive at our docks, for a war that no Capian desires to take part in. This city was founded on setting its own path. The families have lost their way in this regard. They no longer hold our best interests at heart. They no longer prioritize our city's independence. For 40 years, the Peaceable Patriots have held this opinion, protesting against our children, our parents, our relatives being sent to war. Protesting against being used as bargaining chips by the founding families to pay off whatever long-standing debt they've inherited. We will continue to protest these actions until the founders have requited what is owed to the city and its inhabitants. This article is written by Jazz Sparks, who is the Mineral War correspondent for the Storm's Herald. So the party has obviously noticed firsthand the additional Veritas troops. Now, clearly, you are not the only ones that have been paying attention to their arrival in increasing numbers within Stormcape City.
If they were here to get help from us, there wouldn't be so many of them here. They would only send a small delegation to ask for help. They would, while leaving the majority of their force back where they're needed. So that's not the only reason they're here, if that's a reason at all.
Yeah, it seems odd.
What help? Well, the only help that they could give them is maybe something to make their soldiers a lot stronger.
The final full article here is penned by Clark Harrison, who is actually the Storm's Herald junior investigative journalist. Titled, Suspects Spark Civilians into Action. A recent outbreak of fires have left Capians wondering where and when they may strike next. During the early morning hours of April 24th, the arson struck, burning the Toggles and Sprockets storefront window in the Artisanal Alley district, and a boarding house in the Denizen. The fire at Toggles and Sprockets was quickly contained, leaving minimal damage. Proprietor and namesake of the Tinkerer's shop, Flint Togglesprocket, had this to say on the incident. Oh, I bet it was just some kind of prank, like back in 825 MW3 there, we had the window get all egged up after we had to recall the who's it, what's it. It didn't who's it or what's it, eh? Former resident of the boarding house in the Denizen, Frank Daslin, had a differing opinion on the attacks after the fire left his home completely destroyed. Where are the city guard in all of this? Why haven't we seen an inch of movement from them? I'm homeless now and so are my housemates. The whole building burned to the ground. And the people responsible are murderers, One of my 10 roommates, Rumkey, is still missing after the fire. He was terrible to live with, always taking my food, getting blood all over the furniture, taking late-night calls constantly, but that doesn't mean he deserved to be burnt to a crisp in his sleep. Fellow inhabitants of the Denizen seem to share many of these complaints. One such resident, Kendra Slooseberry, has begun to organize a Denizen neighborhood watch to combat the growing crime rate in the city district. While she remained unavailable for direct comment, Slooseberry is on record chastising the Stormcape City Guard's lack of attention to these attacks, and to the Denizen as a whole. Speculation on the Neighborhood Watch's association with the Peaceable Patriots has yet to be confirmed, but does pose a concern for Captain Drake Lakely. Any evidence of a connection between Kendra Slooseberry and the Peaceable Patriots will be acted upon swiftly and judiciously. The Peaceable Patriots remain a group of interest in the Founders' Day bombings, and any associations with said group will be taken very seriously.
This is bad.
Well, Rumpke's in the clear.
I'm dead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Looking
now
for Delta.
you're Ola, or what's your name? Oza?
Olmok.
Ola?
I should start going by my by my new name. Get some different tats, maybe? Cover something up?
And then, of course, you saw the wanted help. But as always, in the Storm's Herald, there is a Dear Dorothy advice column. Last of which to read in this issue. Question. Dear Dorothy, I've lost everything these past weeks. The identity I clung on to from my adult life is now hopelessly out of reach. I've been given an opportunity to redefine myself, and for the first time in my life, I feel as though I actually have agency over my circumstances. I've recently learned that I'm capable of unsavory actions. Actions that fill me with regret once taken, but no amount of hindsight prevents me from repeating my mistakes. But now I've been offered a helping hand. I'd be a fool not to grasp onto it and let it pull me out of my misery, wouldn't I? Submitted by Unhappy Capian.
Oh, poor Happy. Or
Answer.
unhappy.
Answer.
Dear Unhappy Capian, I believe, given particular circumstances, that we are all capable of unsavory actions. We are all fallible, and we all repeat mistakes once thought unrepeatable. Sometimes we have the inner strength to make amends for those mistakes on our own. Other times we need that helping hand. That does not mean we are weak for needing it. It means that our strength lies in knowing the path forward and recognizing that it cannot be walked alone. I hope you find your answer in these words, and I hope you find your inner strength, wherever it lies. Just know that it is always there.
Lies on a boat.
Well,
Lot to think about.
sure is a shame that the whole city's looking for a group of 4 people that match our description.
When does the gossip mag come out?
Oh, the Middling Machination, that is also supposed to come out on the 1st. Is that something you were interested in picking up as well?
Oh, yeah.
I think after having read this, I'd be looking to read the other newspaper too. Yeah.
So the Middling Machination issue number 9, volume 1, whole number 9, for 2 Normail first, 848 MW3. As those that are familiar with the Middling Machination, it's more like a blog, right? Like a conspiracy blog. So there's not a number of articles. It's essentially many rants from Teddy. But his latest issue is titled Prison Pandemonium. Beware, Middlers! Not only must we contend with the city guard's refusal to capture the Lopper creature, now we must be ever vigilant for escaped criminals on our streets. The purportedly inescapable Storm Cape prison has not lived up to his name this past week. A slew of despicable and violent cretins have slipped custody and are now free to enact their preferred hostility upon our beloved city. But how could this happen, you ask? I've asked myself that very thing, devoting all of my energy to uncovering the truth behind this prison break. What kind of person could possibly escape the confines of a rock-walled cell with nary a crack to allow even the slightest flow of air in? And that is when it all made sense, once I connected the dots that led me to an already formed theory I have had about Storm Cape Prison. To squeeze yourself through a minuscule gap in any material could only be done if you did not have any bones. A respected source with eyes inside of the prison informs me that not every incarcerated individual leaves in the same condition as they enter. This fact, paired with the routine deliveries of strange wooden barrels, points to only one thing. The prisoners inside are being experimented on. Cruel and unusual punishment occurs beneath the depths of the plateau. Experiments that leave you a moldable, stretchable, pliable jelly person. But what use could a jelly person be, you ask? As proven by this escape the navigation of claustrophobic rock formations. Formations found within the stoneworks. The stonework rumblings have not stopped since my reporting on them months ago. These jelly people are simply one more step in waking the slumbering monster that rests beneath Storm Cape. It is only a matter of time before these experiments are conducted upon the hardworking members of the Masons Assembly. Mark my words, this is not the last of us hearing about escaped criminals. As always, be aware, be skeptical, be middling.
Well, how about that for an episode? You wanting more? I'm sure you do. I'm just the guy to tell you where to find it. Just type in incorrigibleparty.com in your favorite interweb searcher thingy, and bam, there you go. What's that? You want even more stuff to know about the world? Well, you can do that at World Anvil. Just go over to worldanvil.com/w/center-leland steel. And there's all kinds of stuff there. All you gotta do is get a free account. I bet you were wondering about the great tunes that were filling your ear holes while you were listening. Well, that was tabletop audio and Sarastro music. Great stuff. You want to make us feel good? Then join our Discord. Talk about all kinds of stuff there. Sometimes even the podcast. You got some spare change there burning a hole in your pocket? Well, then join our Patreon at patreon.com/Incorrigible Party. Head over there and see what kind of perks you get. But most of all, tell your friends. Tell the mailman. Tell that guy you met at the gym last week. Tell him how you went into your app thingy and gave us a 5-star review. Then more people can find us and enjoy the show too. Okay, now that I'm done being a shill, there's only one more thing to say. And that's happy adventuring.
This has been a Sounds of Steel production.